Hi, dear gents. We are just trying to connect our social media Facebook. Soon we'll start the session. Thank you. So shall we start the session?
Hello everyone, good evening. Thank you for joining today's Zoom session awareness topic about neck and head cancer organized by Aster Mims Kerala cluster of Aster Oman. Now I would like to introduce panel of our senior management. Dr. Ashindu Kumar Bande, CEO of Aster Hospital and Clinics, Oman. Mr. Farhan Yassin, CEO of Aster North Kerala and Oman Cluster. Dr. Ashik Seno, Medical Director and Senior Consultant Gastroenterologist and Hepatologist of Aster Oman. And Dr. Shinov Raj, Associate Hospital Director of Aster Oman. Next, I would like to introduce our chief guest, Dr. Subendra Kumar, visiting consultant of ENT surgery from Al Nahda Hospital. Now I would like to introduce our main guest speaker from Aster Mims, India, Dr. Sajid Babu, Senior Consultant of Head and Neck Oncosurgery. Dr. Krishna Kumar, Senior Consultant, Plastic, Vascular and Reconstructive Surgery. Dr. Mihir Mohan, Senior Specialist Head and Neck Oncosurgery. And Dr. Manu, Senior Specialist Head and Neck Oncosurgery. Now, we would like to welcome Dr. Ashindu Bandikumar, CEO of Aster Hospital and Clinics Oman, to address the session.
Thank you, Yasmin. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. And I'll start by welcoming our esteemed doctors from Aster Mims team, Dr. Sajid, Dr. Krishna Kumar, and all the senior consultants who have very graciously taken time to address this very important topic, which is head and neck cancer, which will be talked about a little more detail in terms of statistics by senior consultant, Dr. Subendra Kumar. It is one of the burning topics here, but rather than going into the details of the medical part, which the doctors can very well take it, I would like to introduce Aster Oman. Aster Oman, as you know, has got 3 hospitals currently, one in Muscat, one in Sohar, and one in Nipri. We work in this hub and spoke model, wherein the Muscat hospital has got 3 clinics attached to it, which is there at Amirat, Al Khud, and Mabela. Similarly, in Sohar, there are 3 clinics as well as in Nipri. But I would like to take your attention to our newest hospital, which is about to get commissioned at Muscat, which is one of the largest hospitals, private hospitals in Oman, which will be about 175 beds. It is next to our existing facility in Gobra in Oman. And what we want to do in this facility is to bring in all those medical specialties, all those treatment protocols, which is very well there across our hospitals in India, especially in our MIMS cluster, for the population of Oman. So we'll try to focus on all those niche medical programs. And this is one of the first webinars that we are doing with the head and neck cancer team. And I'm sure we'll keep on doing it with all the new medical programs we want to bring to Oman. With that, I'll invite Mr. Farhan, my boss, to say a few words in order to pep it up.
Thank you, Dr. Ashindu. Thank you for your kind words. This will be, as you said, rightly said, that this will be the meeting where both India cluster, Kerala cluster and Aster Oman is joining together to serve the people of Oman. And we will be, as you rightly said, we'll be introducing all other niche departments where the Oman is not having. And in coming weeks, similar webinar sessions will be happening for the public, and we'll also open a second opinion webinars for the public there in Oman. And only thing we have to focus is to give a good and passionate care to the people of Oman. Thank you.
Yasmin, you can take it forward.
Thank you, Dr. Ashindu, and thank you, Mr. Farhan, for the welcoming. Now, I would like to welcome our chief guest, Dr. Surendra Kumar, visiting consultant, to inaugurate the session.
Sir, you are on mute, Dr. Subhendra Kumar.
Thank you, Yasmin. Our dear Mr. Farhan, Dr. Ashindu, Dr. Ashik, I'm not sure whether he is joined or not, but anyway, Dr. Hemant, Dr. Shinod, Dr. Sajid Babu, Dr. Krishna Kumar from the Indian side, and their team members, Dr. Mihir, Dr. Mano, all the teams who are looking after the marketing on the two sides, which is I think the most important part of this event, and all the participants, including colleagues from the community, Omanis and non-Omanis. It's a pleasure to be part of this event. And it is so heartening to see the collaboration between the two teams of Aster Oman chapter or cluster, whatever you may call it, and Aster MIMS chapter from India, Calicut, Kerala, and that's to overseas. And I see this as the, though not wanted, but only side benefit of the travel restrictions during Corona period that has forced the world to resort to online interactions. This is such an event, and we are able to sit across the screen and interact almost as face to face without having to travel. So this is, I think the world has changed during these 2 years because of Corona. That is the sort of positive takeaway from that. I admire Mr. Farhan Saab for having thought about this event, and also the two teams of Oman side and the MIMS Kerala for organizing this meeting. And this will greatly facilitate the interaction between two clusters, the Indian and the Oman clusters, and share their experience and facilitate the management of patients. This would finally benefit the patients in Oman, Omanis, non-Omanis, expatriates in India, in Oman. And this will open another option for treatment for those patients who need treatment across the sea, and often they need treatment abroad because of some of the facilities which are not yet available here, or they need some special treatment. The Aster Group has been striving hard to create centers of excellence and centers for super specialization in various fields. And the constitution of a dedicated oncology team in Kerala, consisting of oncosurgeon and as well as the reconstructive surgeon, that is plastic surgeon, as a part. Those who do not understand, oncosurgeon means the surgeons who remove the tumors, and the reconstructive team is those surgeons who reconstruct the part of the body or the defects in the body left after the excision of the or removal of the tumor. I foresee in the near future that, like the way we are interacting today, why can't we do it for management of the patient, for a difficult patient who needs possible candidate for treatment abroad or treatment in Kerala, MIMS hospital, that the two teams can interact together with the discussing the management of the patient, including the findings, and even the patient can be part of this discussion which would facilitate in trust building between the two teams, and the patient also will feel more confident. And before the patient travels, you will be in a better position to decide about the management. Patient would also know what he has to go through and what preparations he has to make and what preparations our team has to make, and vice versa. I'm sure the IT teams on the two sides will take it as a challenge, as a kind of a next step in this kind of collaboration. And with that, I think as far as the facilities or the expertise available at Oman, we have the expertise for excision of the tumors as our team, as well as we have an excellent plastic surgeon with us, Dr. Gopal, who is trained in this field of reconstruction, that is microvascular flaps, and he's quite experienced. He's attached with the Aster Oman, and I'm sure with the new expansion which is coming up in Aster Oman, we will be able to provide many of these facilities. Of course, infrastructure has to be upgraded. With that, my heartiest congratulations to the Aster Group as a whole on the occasion of the launch of this highly specialized head and neck cancer unit at Aster MIMS in Kerala. And with that, I request the Yasmin to take it over from here. And I thank again for making me part of this event.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Surendra Kumar, for inaugurating the session. Now, I would like to welcome the main speaker, Dr. Sajid Babu, Senior Consultant, Head and Neck Oncosurgery, to start the session.
Thank you, one and all, and good evening. I see lots of doctors and non-doctors in the forum. So today we plan to discuss on head and neck cancers. And because there is a mixed crowd, we will make it as a basic discussion, and we can have a two-way interactions on this. As you all know, this week is a World Head and Neck Cancer Awareness Week. That is why we took up this topic and made it as a discussion. Why World Head and Neck Cancer Week has been celebrated or has been thought of is mainly because even in this modern era, we see lots of people suffering with head and neck cancer. It is across the globe. It is mainly a problem in Southeast Asian countries. So there is a high need that we have to think of this head and neck cancer, how to diagnose it, what are the treatment options available, and how to go further and reduce the pain and sufferings of patients. So to discuss here, I have with me Dr. Krishna Kumar. Dr. Krishna Kumar is Chief Plastic Surgeon who works along with us. As you all know, any surgery would require a reconstruction, and that is mainly important mainly for oncosurgeries. The other surgeons who are available here are Dr. Mihir Mohan, who is my colleague. He is a senior specialist and works along with us as a team. Dr. Anulis Matthew, who is working as a specialist. And the team doesn't end here. Actually, any oncosurgery or any onco treatment includes various other specialties as well. It includes radiation oncologists, medical oncologists, a team of paramedical staff. Here in my head and neck surgery team, I have specialist nurse, Denmal Michael, and our dietitian, Adira. So our team, this is our team who works day in and day out together to help our patients. To give an introduction to head and neck cancer, can I switch over to my presentation, please? I will give a brief introduction and then discuss with my colleagues as we move on. if you see, any cancer is an unregulated cell division. Any cell which has lost its control will multiply so fast than the surrounding cells. So what happens is it outgrows the number. It outgrows in number, and it brings about lots and lots of cells in few minutes or few hours. So this is what you see in a normal cell division, that is where the cells divide, and as we grow, every part of the body divides and repairs and regains. Whereas in cancer, this whole control mechanism is gone. And that is what you will see. The whole control mechanism, when it is gone, it divides in a faster way. So what happens in few hours or days happens in few seconds. So when it happens like that, there is no space for the cells, additional cells to stay. So that comes out as a swelling or a mass or an ulcer. And then later it starts eating away the whole nutrition, the whole the surrounding area. So that is what will happen, and that is what usually happens in solid malignancies. If you see the literature or if you see the statistics, head and neck cancer is one of the leading cancer, as I said, in Southeast Asia. So here is a distribution. If you see the red marks, that is the red painted areas are oral cancers. See, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh and Southeast Asian countries are marked red, which is a very high burden areas, and some part of the Africa. Whereas the other part of the world has some other cancers like larynx and pharynx cancers. So, if you take everything together, head and neck cancers is a big burden in the whole world. Now, let me ask my colleague, Dr. Anulis. When we say about head and neck cancer, which are the areas that we usually see? I told about head and neck, oral cancer, pharyngeal cancers. So in our practice, what are the usual cancers that we should see?
The usual cancers we see are cancers in oral cavity, mainly buccal mucosa, tongue, oropharynx and hypopharynx too, laryngeal cancers also. There are also cancers involving the thyroid gland and other salivary gland malignancies also.
So she has said it correctly. It is mainly the oral cancer that we see in India and Indian subcontinents. The other cancers that we see as a common one is thyroid cancer. There are many other. Any area that you name in head and neck area has a cancer associated with it, and these are usually seen. Maybe let it be salivary glands, the pharyngeal areas, the ear, the nose. So it can happen to any area. Now, Dr. Mihir, may I ask you this question? Why is it? Why do the people develop cancers? Why it is common? Why do people develop cancers?
The most common cause for developing cancer is addiction to tobacco products and alcohol. There are several other instances where even non-addicts develop cancers. This is usually associated with human papillomavirus, and there are also other instances like exposure to UV rays or related to their profession or improper diet.
So that is right. So among the patients that we see, 60 to 70% of patients do have a cause. And many of these causes are addiction to or use of tobacco or alcohol. But there are unlucky people as well who doesn't have any of these factors. They were living a very normal, very nice, very good life, but still develop cancer. And the causes that are usually seen are malnutrition or trauma, or even causes unknown. Sometimes it may be just genetic changes that usually happens. So one thing that we have to remember is that it occurs even without the use of tobacco. So sometimes that suspicion has to be there whenever a doctor sees a patient, and that way we can diagnose the patients earlier. Now, what happens is, if you see our patients, many of them will be using tobacco in various forms. The tobacco can be present in smoking forms or non-smoking forms. That is, the tobacco chewing forms that are usually seen in our part of the world. And along with that, they may take alcohol as well. So everything will play together and contribute together to cause cancer. Now, there are various challenges that we face. I have presentations wherein I can talk about for hours on all this topic, but I will touch upon the basic main things only. Now, if you take oral cancer, I told you the causes can be because of use of tobacco, and many of these patients presents in a continuous manner. Dr. Annalise, what are these things that we are talking about? Do you see these kind of pictures? If you see, this is the continuum process. Like a patient may develop something called a small changes in the tongue or the oral cavity, and that slowly it progresses to oral cancer. But still, we fail to pick up these patients, correct? So what do you think, as an ENT surgeon, what do you think is the cause for not picking up these cases early?
Many patients, they do not take these symptoms seriously. They ignore these symptoms until they develop something, until they reach a later stage of the disease.
So that is correctly said. There is a big lack of lack of understanding from the patient side, or even that the patients takes them, or they just ignores these symptoms, because many of these patients are not concerned about their health. So that is why they continue to chew, continue to use tobacco. The biggest problem is that all these patients, because even though it grows in from small to big, by the time it reaches to us, it becomes big, like the pictures that are shown in the lower side. So the challenge to us is very, very big. I will ask Krishna Kumar sir. Sir, we have been treating head and neck cancers. So what is the challenge when you have a patient with an early cancer and when you have a patient with an advanced cancer, in terms of reconstructing and giving them the tissues back to the normal?
Yeah, it's a very, very basic elemental question that you're asking, Dr. Fight. But on the other hand, it's a very, very important question as well. When you're faced with a cancer, as you all know, the primary important aim in treatment that cancer is to get rid of all the tissues that are involved with the cancer, so that we arrive at a cure or complete eradication of all the abnormal cells. This would at times involve extremely mutilating surgeries where most of the face and most of the head and neck are taken out. In the olden days, when the treatment was purely to get rid of the disease, come what may, the treatment would stop there. And the patient had to suffer the consequences of taking out major tissues from the face, and he or she would not be able to speak, drink, eat, chew, and the grandchildren would run away in fear because of the grotesque sight that's left behind. This is where reconstruction comes in. Those days of treating the patient and letting him face the consequences are long gone. Now the aim of treatment is to make sure that whatever tissues are taken away for treating the cancer are put back as close to normal as possible, so that the patient is integrated back to society in almost a near normal manner. And that is the ethos and pathos of treating head and neck cancers, specifically head and neck cancers, which means extirpation of the tumor and reconstruction and letting the patient go back to society as a near normal being, so that they can lead a near normal life.
Correctly said, sir. And so that brings up a question, brings up a conclusion remark as well, that even the patient, if the patient comes in an early way, we can make them back to the normal situation, and they can go back to their work and society as a normal individual. But many a times we don't get that. We get some patients like this. If you see, there is a patient with a large tumor on the left side of the face. This is what sometimes we get. Dr. Mihir, once we get this kind of patients, how do we go about? How do we make a diagnosis of cancer? Is it just by looking at it, and or how do we confirm the diagnosis, and how do we go about it?
So after detailed clinical examination, we need to prove whatever we are seeing is a tumor. For that purpose, we'll need histopathological report. When it's a tumor that, as you have shown, it's quite easily seen and we can take a biopsy from that. Many a time the tumor is not apparent. It may be in the nasopharynx or the oropharynx or the larynx, or it may be a swelling in the neck. In those instances, we have to take biopsies endoscopically or obtain a fine needle aspiration to prove that it is cancer, and then move ahead with radiological examinations to see the extent of the tumor.
Yeah. So head and neck area has so many hidden areas inside. Head and neck, we have. So there is some disruption. It's okay. We have some hidden areas in head and neck. That is another reason why many patients present in a later stage, because their symptoms may not be that evident. It may come, the symptoms may be there only after the tumor goes into the third or fourth stage. So sometimes we may have to use some methods like endoscopic biopsies. So that is why an ENT surgeon plays a main role in head and neck cancer management. Now, once we get the patient and diagnose, we usually see other things. We have to see the patient as a whole. One of the main important thing is the patient's nutritional status and his other problems that we usually see. Now, the patient's nutritional status is many times at a lower stage, because many of these patients will have problems of eating and swallowing. I have my dietitian with me here, Ms. Adira. May I ask you, Adira, what are the problems that you usually see in our patients who are diagnosed with head and neck cancers? Do they really have eating problems? Do they take normal diet, or is there any altered dietary pattern in them?
Yes, they have problems in swallowing, mainly in the oral cancer patients. They cannot take, like normal patients, they cannot have their foods. So the nutrition plays an important role in the head and neck surgery patients, as we see the patients before and after the surgery and give adequate nutrition support. And mainly the recovery of the patients mainly depends on the diet.
Correct. Dr. Manu, may I ask you, we usually see many of the patients with oral cancer as well as pharyngeal cancers. So do they have usually some swallowing problems as well? What are the usual issues that we see in them?
Is it preoperative or?
Yes, preoperatively once we see the patient initially.
Yes, they do have swallowing issues, which actually has to be taken care of even before the treatment.
Correct.
Actually, it is actually a preventive strategy which has to be started even before the treatment starts.
That's rightly said. That is why we need a detailed evaluation, which includes not only the clinical examination, the examination to find out what are their swallowing problems, their eating habits, their nutritional assessment. That is why we need a team. So the team would include lots of people, as I said. It includes surgeon, radiation oncologist, medical oncologist, prosthodontist, speech language pathologist, physiotherapist, oncology nurse, and surgeon includes sometimes the maxillofacial surgeon, reconstructive surgeon, and it's a teamwork. Now, if you take the treatment of head and neck cancer, Dr. Manu, again, may I ask you, why do you think surgery plays a role in head and neck cancer, and why we treat these patients initially with, because we have to remove some part of the body. Do you like to remove some part of the body? No, sometimes it is not a happy thing, right? So even in early, is there any option, any other option? Can we treat these patients with radiotherapy, or is surgery is the only option?
Usually in oral cavity malignancies, the primary modality of treatment is surgery. In previous days, we used to do radiation and chemoradiation as a primary modality, but that has shown to have a decreased disease-free survival, and surgery shows a better survival. And again, using surgery as the primary modality of surgery, you have radiation and chemotherapy as an alternative, or you have it as a adjuvant therapy that can be used.
Right. So if you see, it is mainly the oral cavity cancers that are usually seen, and then the surgery plays the front role in early cancers. Now, what happens when it is advanced cancers? Dr. Mihir, in advanced cancers, do we do anything else after surgery, and what are the options which are available?
So as Dr. Manu has said, there are other options of treatment such as chemotherapy, radiotherapy, targeted therapy, immunotherapy and such. But in case of, even if it is a locally advanced tumor, still the role of surgery is at forefront. The other modalities are playing an adjuvant role, like you just said.
So it is the surgery first, and then in order to prevent the recurrences, that is usually any cancers will have a chance of recurrence. That is, there is a chance that these tumors may come back at a later stage. So this chance increases as the tumor stage goes up. So if there is a higher chance of recurrence, then these patients' recurrence chance can be reduced with other modalities of treatment like radiotherapy and or chemotherapy. Now, Krishnakumar sir, I have shown two varieties of patients. That is, one is early cancers and one is late cancers. So, is there any change in your reconstructive options when we take up these patients?
Of course, if you have a very small early cancer, the reconstruction becomes that much more easier than huge fungating masses that protrude out of every single cavity or on the surface. It does make a huge difference. And again, as the doctor, the medical part of the audience would know, reconstruction goes in steps. It's classically said that reconstruction is a ladder. And you start from the bottom step, which is the simplest step, and then you go higher and higher and higher, and things become more and more and more complicated as you go higher up. And sometimes the highest possible step is needed when you're dealing with something that's very large, fungating, and complicated.
Yes. So, so sir has summarized it that it can be very simple. We can replace anything with anything. And I am sure that Dr. Krishnamar will be able to replace a skin, a muscle, a bone, or a nerve, or a vessel. So anything can be replaced. So on the surgeon side, we are very happy that we can cut anything, and there is somebody who can replace anything back. So, but it is at the well, it has to be from the patient itself, and that is the only problem, because patient has to lose something else to gain at one area, right, sir? Right. Okay. Now, these patients after surgery needs a very critical care in the immediate postoperative period, because we might have removed a part of the face and then replaced with a large tissue to fill in that area. So, in the immediate postoperative period, many things will be at difficult situation, like airway, the patient's swallowing will be affected, the patient's breathing will be a problem, there is a chance of bleeding. So all these patients are managed in a critical care way, and in the immediate postoperative period, the management from the nursing side is very important. So I will ask Denmol, what are the usual challenges that you see when a patient comes to you in the postoperative area? Is it like any of the medical oncology patient or any of the medical other patients, or do you find that these head and neck cancer patients is a little different and they have to be cared at a very close manner?
Sir, it is very different in head and neck case. We have to give close monitoring to patient vital parameters, and also care of surgery patients.
Many times they will have airway problems.
And
many
also
of them will be on tracheostomies.
Yes, sir. Patient with tracheostomy, you have to close monitoring with airway, and we have to care tracheostomy properly.
And what will you do if these patients have something like a free flap or a big flap it is there? How do you monitor them?
We have to continuously monitor. Hourly flap monitoring is needed, and also patient with oral cavity surgery, we have to give hourly oral care, then infection prevention management, and also their feed nutritional status also we have to manage.
Right. Are we on air? Hello? Is there a hitch? Right. Hope you can hear us. Yasmin?
Sorry for the interruption. We will resume fast.
Okay. Right. Are we back? So Ms.
Yes,
Denmol was saying that a close monitoring of head and neck cancer patient is at most important for a fast recovery. We need to look into many aspects. Ms. Adira, what do we usually do in a head and neck cancer patients? How do we take care of their nutrition?
Usually in the oral cancer, first of all, the patient will have NGT feeds because they cannot take food orally. So nasogastric tube feeding is done. Initially, we will give.
I think it is not audible.
I think we do have internet connection issue. Just 1 second. We will get back again after some times.
Continue, please.
Usually in oral cancer patients, we will give nasogastric tube feeding. So initially we will start with 30 ml hourly feeds. So according to the patient's tolerations, the feed will be increased.
Yeah, so correctly said. So all these patients are critical kind of patients, and we monitor them very closely. And so that is why a team play is important. And as I said, when you have to treat a large advanced cancers, these patients will have a long stay of treatment. It may be around 10 days, 15 days, a close monitoring in ICU. Lots of monitoring and fund is required. And as you know, many of our patients in head and neck cancers are poor patients. I have our CEO, Mr. Farhan Yasin here. So may I ask you, when we started head and neck team and head and neck cancer treatment, I'm sure we would have had many patients coming up with poor economic status. How did you tackle this, and then how did you manage them?
So we work on a single principle that a patient who is approaching us, even if it's financially not that much affordable to take the treatment, we have to go ahead with the treatment, because cancer is a disease that we needs to address it at early stage, and we have to give the treatment. So we have already tied up with a lot of financial support systems, whereas we provide financial assistance for the patients, like we have MIMS Charitable Trust, we have DM Foundation, and we have Aster Volunteer Service, where we make sure that even if the patient is financially poor, the treatment should, he or she should get the treatment. So entire Aster group, including Oman and India, we work in the same principle.
Thank you, Mr. Farhan. So I will stop it at this moment for a interaction. Dr. Subirendra Kumar, I have covered a basic nutshell how we manage a oral cancer and the basic, which is the most important thing in head and neck cancer. Now your comments, and then anything from Oman side.
Yeah, Dr. Sajid, thank you for covering it quite comprehensively, and it was an overview. The field is very vast, as you have already appropriately mentioned. I happen to be in a good situation because I have a past experience from India and now in Oman. India, I was at All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi, till 1998, and then I came here. I am also associated with the Tertiary Care Hospital, that is another hospital. I'm sure the Indian side would not know. So that is, we are having a head and neck unit here. I would like to, because you have covered multiple aspects of cancer, so I think whatever comments are there on different areas, I would like to complete it here. The first I would like to start head and neck cancer. Can you meet all of them, please? Yeah. First is head and neck cancer. In spite of it being one of the commonest cancers, in various cancer registries that you see, it is still split into different areas. Cancer lip, cancer oral cavity, that cheek, tongue. So if you add all of them, then it becomes one of the commonest cancers. But if you let them remain split, then each side becomes not so common. So when you say head and neck, then all of them should be included, including the thyroid cancers and oral cancers, laryngeal cancers, hypopharyngeal, nasopharyngeal, and the salivary glands. Maxillary sinus, we often forget. We should not forget, because in India, it is not so uncommon. The difference that I have found between India and Oman has been that the hypopharyngeal cancer base of tongue and tonsil, and larynx is not so common here. The oral cancer, by far, we have found to be, again, the commonest, even though smoking is not, or tobacco chewing is not so common here, though people are there who smoke, and then people are there who use tobacco as a chewing habit. But still, we have oral cancer by far the commonest. And tongue and alveolar part, alveolar carcinomas are the commonest. Now, in spite of Oman having excellent health services like primary healthcare, secondary healthcare, and proper referral system, we still see advanced cancers. And we have been sort of baffled that patient staying next to the hospital, next to the tertiary care hospital, reaches you in stage 4. And then we, in some cases, we sort of reverse investigated the patient as to how this patient was missed. And we found certain reasons for that. One is GP awareness. For quite some time, the patient stays with GP because that is the primary care in Oman. And in spite of all the courses and workshops that we conduct, they still keep the patient treating with medical treatment, etc., etc. This will be fine. So what are those cardinal signs that they have to look after, including ENT surgeons and dental surgeons? Dental surgeons keep treating the patient without realizing that the non-healing gingivitis, localized gingivitis, or non-healing tooth extraction site is an early cancer actually. and patient reaches to us when it's already involved the mandible and has reached stage 4. Then including our ENT surgeons, hoarseness for 3 months is their hoarseness and they have not really investigated it. It is not here. I'm sure it is in India also because I have experience in India also. So cardinal signs, if it is a non-healing ulcer, blood stained, this is for the awareness of public as well, including our doctors and public, our colleagues in the community. Non-healing ulcer, blood stained nasal discharge, especially if it is unilateral, and dental sockets which are not healing after extraction, because the loosening of tooth is one of the earliest signs of oral cancer involving the alveolus of the oral cavity. And they keep treating it with antibiotics. Okay, you come next week, come after 1 month. By the time the patient already has stage 3 or stage 4 cancer. Hoarseness, because on examination, you have to, all GPs are not able to examine the larynx. So if they do not refer the patient in time to an ENT surgeon, then it gets delayed. Dysphagia, difficulty in swallowing, can be because of pharyngeal cancers, oropharyngeal cancers, but hypopharyngeal cancers particularly can have both difficulty in swallowing as well as hoarseness. I think that part has to be so high vigilance is very, very important. Any neck swelling which is persistent, it does not mean that all the inflammatory swellings, acute lymphadenitis also should be looked into the same way, but if it is not healing and it is persisting, it must be looked into. It could be a lymph node, it could be a thyroid gland tumors. So early detection is very important. It is our moral duty to make sure that we pick up these patients at early stage. Stage 1 and stage 2, the treatment and the prognosis and the final outcome is far, far better than stage 3 and stage 4. So I think with that, we have been doing all these surgeries, including mandibular resection. We have an excellent oromaxillofacial surgery department with us. We have a collaboration with Khola Hospital that is providing the plastic surgery part of the reconstruction. We have been doing free flaps with the help of plastic surgeons. However, the numbers may not be as much as in India. You see, the Oman population is about 5 to 6 million, including the expatriates, which is in India, which will be the population of a small city. So the numbers will definitely not have experience of North India. That's why we used to have almost 20 patients in a week, new patient, because the AIIMS Delhi used to be the referral center. And out of that, possibly 70% were the ones who have come for final opinion. So stage 4, which is unresectable, has reached AIIMS for the final opinion, but 30% of them are still treatable. That still becomes a huge number. So in Oman, we have, fortunately, we have a government which supports the free treatment for all the Omani patients and many of the expatriate patients also. However, as you know, the same situation is there with all government setups. You still have waiting lists, and sometimes patients on their own would like to go abroad, or they want treatment in private. And we have expatriate population, significant number here in Oman, who would like to have treatment in private. So the options and opportunities are plenty for us to serve the community and patients. And some patient may still have to go abroad to MIMS. And I think this interaction and this collaboration between the two institutions will pave way for real super specialized management of the head and neck cancer. Thank you.
Right, sir. Thank you for bringing out that points. Those were the points which we were planning to discuss in the next section. So,
okay.
Dr. Kumar has clearly mentioned the signs and symptoms that has to be taken care of, especially in head and neck cancer. So, any ulcer which is persisting for more than 2 weeks has to be brought under notice of an ENT or a head and neck surgeon. Any mass that has been persisting in the neck or has recently increased in size also needs a special mention. Long-standing tumors can turn into malignancy sometimes, and that is what even today we had a patient who had been having a long-standing mass which has turned into malignancy, and then we had to take her for surgery. So it's a common scenario. Sir has brought out a big question. We experts are available. Even sir said in Oman there are experts, in India and in whole of India we have so much of doctors and experts. But still we get patients in a late stage. Dr. Mihir, why do you, we have already discussed this point, but again to reiterate the same thing. What can we do to get this patient early?
I think as Dr. Kumar has said rightly, it mostly depends on the GPs and the primary care physicians too, because expecting a patient to be completely aware of something that can be precancerous or is already a cancer might be a problem. But these people do actually go to a doctor, and that doctor has, like sir said, the responsibility to identify it correctly, to maybe or at least refer to someone who might be able to identify it in a right manner and treat it in a timely manner.
So it is the time that is much important. Another big factor that we usually see is even if the patient has been diagnosed, we don't have much expert centers which can treat these patients. Now, Dr. Manu, if you see a northern part of Kerala, okay, how many centers are there in northern part of Kerala who can treat head and neck cancer? I'm just talking about one small state in Kerala. Okay, if you take it in the whole of India, it will be just multiple, but I'll ask Manu, just the expert.
I think excluding MIMS in Calicut and Kannur, we have one in the private sector and one in the government sector. That's all, I think.
So probably this northern part of Kerala would it's about 4 to 5 districts covering about few millions of population, and this has only 1 or 2 centers, and Aster MIMS is one of them. Its 2 centers are catering to head and neck cancers. So if you take the whole of Kerala as such, we have handful of centers which can do a good work in head and neck surgery. It is not that anybody does a surgery and then call it the treatment. No, we need a specialized center, specialized care for doing these kind of treatments, and maybe whole of India will have. So the fact is that even if a patient is diagnosed, it's very difficult to get an expert center, and as Dr. Kumar has already said, in the whole of Oman, you might have only 2 or 3 people catering to these kind of patients. So that is another thing. So the waiting period for surgery itself is going to be a huge. I think Dr. Kumar, again, for your opinion, you would have seen patients waiting in AIIMS for months to get treatment, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So that is another big challenge. So it's a big burden for all the treating physician to get the patient early and treat them early. That is another big thing. Dr. Anu?
Yeah, can I make a comment here?
Yes, please.
Small comment? Yes. See, because then otherwise the thing will proceed in a further direction. 2 very important points which we have come across, and it's a universal thing, I think, in developing countries. One is a denial by the patient. You tell the patient possibly you have to get it treated because it may be cancer. If you tell them that may be cancer, they feel you are scaring us. You know, they feel scared. If you do not tell them, then they just go to another person and then another person, like that. Even if you tell them, then there is a denial. No, doctor, possibly you are not. I think all of us face that. Second point is the hesitation to biopsy. You advise a patient, we want to take a biopsy from here. They think taking a biopsy is a major issue and it would increase the cancer. And without taking a biopsy, you cannot proceed with any kind of treatment. So this problem we have been facing until the patient comes into a further advanced stage. Instead of stage 1, 2, patient reaches you in stage 3. And then the final treatment is completely different for stage 3 as compared to stage 1 and stage 2. I think what was the, sorry, Dr. Sajid, you were continuing with that?
That's exactly correct. So there are multiple factors. We were talking about factors which are leading to advanced diagnosis of patients in the advanced cancer. One is that the timely referral. Second is that there are factors from the patient as well, because many of these patients do deny that they have some problem. And I have a doctor who has a very good communication skill, Dr. Krishna Kumar. You would have been dealing with many patients and then communicating with them. What is the, whenever they have a the feeling of denial, how do you tackle them? And then it's off the topic, but still I think it's important.
Yeah, the thing is, denial is due to multiple factors. One is they are dead scared of what is ahead of them. And the word cancer in most cases, even in our country, spells or equivalent to death. And that is the one thing that they are very, very, very scared about. The second thing that's scared about is the course of treatment. What does it involve? If it involves a lot of pain, does it involve a lot of mutilation? Does it involve debility? And are they going to be a burden to their family? And the third thing is, of course, the cost. And probably the fourth thing are the social factors as to what people think about them, etc., etc. And so these are all the things that come into play, and that is what probably scares the patient into sort of denying that he's got something that could potentially be treated. And this is exactly what I focus on. And when someone comes to me with this, and when you spell the word cancer, then immediately I think it's your duty as a clinician to tell them the other half of the cancer, and that is the cancer, one, does not equate to death. And in most cases, even in sometimes in advanced cases, it is curable, or definitely we can prolong qualitative life for a long period of time. And the second thing is the mutilation and the pain and the suffering that you have to undergo during the course of treatment. And I tell them, we will have to take a lot of tissue out, but that does not mean that you're going to be mutilated. That does not mean that you're going to be grotesque. And that does not mean that you're going to be shunned by the society. You will come out after treatment as a near normal person, and you will be able to lead a normal life. And then the third thing is the cost. And again, as our CEO has very rightly said, in a group like Aster, our treatment comes first, and the cost and the payment probably comes a far distant second. So again, I tell them that is not something you need to be worried about. And I educate the family also, saying that we have a problem here, which is potentially treatable, which is potentially curable, and you're going to have your loved one back as a near normal person as we knew them before. And if you put all these factors in one package and give it to them or present it to them, the chances are that they're going to accept your argument, your diagnosis, and your treatment protocol. The last thing that you want to do is to scare them away, an early cancer to come back of stage 4 and potentially uncurable. And I think it's our duty as clinicians and our duty as health professionals to do the second part of it as well, and not just stop at the diagnosis and give them a mechanical treatment protocol. We need to take them into confidence, and you need to be a partner in the treatment process. And that is the way that you're going to cure all these very, very difficult problems.
Right, sir.
Can I make a small comment here, Dr. Sajid?
Yes, please. Go
See,
ahead, sir.
Breaking the news, we call it breaking the bad news, not in terms of, this is also bad news, but to break it to the patient becomes sort of, it's an art. It is, when it is the first time informing the patient, it should be done by a little more senior person. Sometimes we have a residency program here, and I happen to be faculty at AIIMS as well. So we never allowed the resident to go alone and then explain it to the patient. So sometimes the residents also have to learn. So they have to inform the patient in a supervised manner, because if you explain to them that this is cancer, without in the same go, you have to tell them that this is not the end of your so you have to break it in a positive way, that though you require an aggressive treatment, but at the same time, this is curable, and the earlier we do it, the better it is. Otherwise, because they keep shopping otherwise from one center to another center, and then the thing goes. Yeah, please continue. Thank you.
Yes. I will ask Dr. Anulis, because she has been recently into head and neck cancer and treatment. And then, Dr. Anu, you would have seen many patients being treated. Do you think their quality of life is that bad?
Not really, because we have a very good reconstruction and very good rehabilitation after the surgery. They have almost near normal life after even a major surgery.
So that brings the importance of rehabilitation. So it is not that patients can be treated with one go. We need a team. It includes rehabilitation as well. All these patients, though we remove many parts of the body, we treat and then some of these places are altered, the rehabilitation and the after care is very important. Dr. Manu, what do you do for rehabilitating these patients? Usually, what are the things that we usually do for rehabilitated?
Rehabilitation actually it warrants a separate topic. It is a separate discussion. It's a very long discussion. Rehabilitation can be not just physical, mental rehabilitation as well. So just discussing about the physical rehabilitation, that is in many patients it is lifelong. That has to be followed. In oral cavity surgery, usually we go for neck dissection, and neck dissection results in, especially in radical and extended neck dissections, there will be some degree of shoulder dysfunction, and that has to be taken care of, and that needs early intervention to prevent frozen shoulder.
So you mean what you're going to say is that some of these patients require physiotherapy, correct? Yeah. So we will have to give physiotherapy to these patients for various neck movements, neck shoulder movements, and the other aspects?
Another important aspect is speech and swallowing. That is very important, especially if you are treating a tongue malignancy, a tongue which is a very versatile organ, and which even with the best reconstruction, it's very difficult to bring back to its original form.
But
so there will be some.
Go ahead, please.
There will be some form of disability in speech and swallowing that has to be taken care of.
So we will be able to bring them back with various kinds of swallowing therapy, speech therapy, and physiotherapies. So these are all things which we usually do, and that is why, as Dr. Anu has said, we are able to give good quality of life to the patient even after such a mutilating surgery, and many of these patients are back to normal. Now, when we talk about other areas of cancer, there are various other parts like thyroid. Thyroid is very simple to treat because the surgery is not so mutilating. It just removes one organ, correct? Dr. Mehir, you want to take on that? The treatment of thyroid.
Yes, so thyroid cancer, what we say is if you have to get a cancer, get a thyroid cancer, because it is completely treatable. You can do a good surgery where we don't leave any sort of remnant, and then finally to cover the microscopic, if there is any kind of microscopic spread, you can capture it using radioiodine ablation also.
So even if it is a tumor which has spread into various parts of the neck or even outside the neck, we may be able to treat thyroid cancers because it is very simple and they respond very well. a patient with thyroid cancer will be living a very normal life, and these patients may not require much of rehabilitative methods. And many a times this organ is removed, we don't even require any reconstructions unless it has come into the skin and other areas of the body. So there are similar cancers, other cancers like salivary gland cancers, wherein we don't need to give any too much of the patients may not get into too much of problems because they are simple to treat. But there are other gamut of cancers like pharyngeal cancers. Dr. Manu, in these kind of pharyngeal cancers, what are the methods that we usually use so that the patient doesn't have much of a problem?
Pharyngeal cancers after surgery.
Treatment modalities of pharyngeal cancers. Is it surgery or do we treat it differently?
In pharyngeal cancers, the early stage cancers are usually treated with non-surgical modality as a primary mode of treatment, and that's actually organ preserving strategy that is followed. And advanced disease, stage 4 as such is treated with surgery. Stage 3 is still again treated with organ preserving strategy with chemoradiation.
So that is another important topic wherein we give so much of importance to functions of organs, and there are so much of conservation treatments which are available. You may not lose all the functions that are there. So we can either do a conservation surgery like an laser surgery, or a robotic, or an other newer modalities like TAU surgeries, which are all these are conservation surgeries that we usually do. If it is for nose and nasopharyngeal areas, sometimes not the nasopharynx, the nose and the paranasal sinuses areas, we can do endoscopic surgery. You may not even have any scar outside. So even a scarless surgeries are available, conservation surgeries are available. So don't go back with the impression that, okay, these people are taking away all parts of the area and then trying to rehabilitate. No, it is not so. Many times we can do conservation surgeries, we can do endoscopic surgeries, scarless surgeries in many of these areas. So it depends on areas and areas. So all these conservation surgeries like laser surgeries has got good result also. So Dr. Subirendra Kumar or any other from the Oman side for opinion regarding this?
I think that's very well said by you, Dr. Krishna Kumar, and everyone else. The management of this cancer in the maxillary sinus or ethmoids, for example, earlier, if you remember, there used to be if it is ethmoidal cancer, then it is craniofacial resection, the treatment of choice. The things have changed now. Endoscopic treatment, as you very correctly put it. Nowadays, piecemeal removal or endoscopic removal is the standard treatment. Laser treatment, of course, is the patient, whenever they come, the first thing they ask is, will you do it by laser? And the laser is not a choice for every site, but yes, it has its own role. And where it has its role, it is a very important role. For example, larynx or even resection of the tongue. Sometimes if you use laser, then the post-op edema, etc., is much less. But yes, I think the head and neck cancer treatment is very rewarding in expert hands. Like I can see Dr. Krishna Kumar has extensive experience, and Dr. Sajid, you in terms of removal of the tumor. But you have a great advantage that you do not have to bother how much you have to resect it, because cancer resection means enough margin. And if you have to reconstruct yourself, then it's a human nature. You will tend to get compromise in the resection. That if I remove an additional half a centimeter, I will have to put a flap. Am I right? The feelings are the same.
That's why I am both a surgeon as well as a reconstructive surgeon, because I have been doing both local flaps, regional flaps, and reconstructive free flaps myself for long years, 12 years I've been doing. So it's so never we would compromise. So if we are confident of, or if the team, now I'm not saying about one individual, if you have a team as such, we don't need to worry about. So we can treat what is required we don't need to worry about the resection part. And what we have to be looking at is only the oncological safety. Dr.
See, as you rightly said, the name of the game is a team game. And that's the only thing that's going to give you success and good outcome to your patients. And as you rightly said, you know, the resecting surgeon should not be worrying about the margin, one. And second thing, if he were to do it's going to be long hours. And there's a physical fatigue is going to kick in at some time. And if it's just one single team, you know, there's nobody to talk to, there is nobody to query if you have any doubts. But if you have a senior person or a senior team standing by next to you, it becomes a lot of fun working together. And the long hours pass like that. And you would think it's only 1 hour and you probably would have done 12 hours worth of work. All these things are important. And it is the team game, and it is only the team game that's going to give you a good, easy life and a wonderful outcome to your patients. And that is the mantra.
Right. Rightly said, sir. So, we were talking about conservation and the teamwork for this head and neck surgery. So, the conservation surgeries are a newer additions to the head and neck thing. And you were mentioning about laser surgery as well. So to the public and the people who doesn't know about laser, I would, because people are more familiar with lasers for the skin and the cosmetic laser rather than the laser that we use. So laser is a tool which is used for cutting, and here any cancer in the areas like pharynx or larynx can be cut with the laser. So it is not just it is not fumigating with laser or just vaporizing with laser. It is just what we use it is for cutting the area so that we get a very precise cut, and that will help in reducing the morbidity to the patient. Right? Now, if you speak about aftercare of these patients, any patient who are treated fully, if the patient requires surgery, radiotherapy or chemotherapy, all these patients require follow-up. Now, how important is follow-up in our patients? Dr. Manu, again to you. Why do we actually follow up these patients?
Follow-up is essential because whatever we do, the chance of recurrence is there. So follow-up is to identify a recurrence as early as possible and give appropriate treatment.
So one is if at all the patient develops any recurrence, because only very few patients might recur, but even if the patient has got a chance of recurrence, then they have to be picked up in an early stage and then treated again, because again we would have lost this time in the initial treatment. Now again we should not lose it. So that is why these patients will be followed up. Second, if they have any of the problems like because of surgery because of the treatment, these can be tackled. And third, they can be rehabilitated back to the normal life. So these are things that we usually see. So the crux of the matter is that once a patient has been diagnosed, they have to be followed up for life, right, for various reasons. So the travel and the distance is very important. So that is why centers like Aster MIMS is able to take care of these kind of oncological treatment, because they have multiple centers at multiple areas. So any patient, if one patient is treated here in Calicut, they can be followed up even at Kannur, or a patient being treated at Cochin can be followed up at Calicut, because these are the area, for those people who doesn't know, there are the distance between all these areas are 200 to 300 kilometers. So this can be followed up because the multi hospital chain can easily do the thing. So that is one of the advantages. So the one matter which I have to bring to notice is that any patient who gets treatment may require a lifelong follow-up, And that is why you cannot get surgery done at Delhi and then come back to Kerala. So it will be very difficult to manage. So it is always better to have a facility which is close to your place and where you can always follow up for the lifelong. Right, Dr. Subhendra?
Yeah, I think on this issue, you are right. Sometimes for a specialized treatment, for example, there is a patient in Oman, we can always, and it needs a facility of the center across in Aster MIMS. Then of course, patient can go, you complete the treatment, patient comes back, and we are in a good position to continue the follow-up here. So that way patient will not be at a disadvantage. And so that way your team, I think, will play a big role in management of many of these patients. And I can see the team that you have is a very well organized and more like a complete team. I am so happy to see nutritionist in your team, and I'm sure there is a physiotherapist somewhere, and those people who are looking after the psychological part of the patients, psychotherapy, and boosting the morale of the patient. Many of these patients in the immediate post-op period will have a depression. So that is the period when you have to, because if the patient is happy, has a positive attitude, then the outcome is also better.
Right, you are absolutely right. So any of the people from Oman or any public person has any questions, we are ready to take up these questions. If you keep discussing, we have so many things to discuss, we will keep on doing that. I think we will conclude by taking up a few questions from the audience.
Dear guests, if you have any inquiries, kindly share it with us so that our doctor will be happy to answer it.
I saw Dr. Talib around. Dr. Talib, who is head of department at Sohar Hospital, because Sohar region is one of the most densely populated area, plus has a very high expatriate population. And doctors have worked with Dr. Talib. He is one of the brightest ENT surgeons of Oman, and in a very senior position in Sohar. Has he logged out, or he's still around? He can give his comments if he's around. I think maybe he's not.
Dr. Talib, and also special thanks to Dr. Majid, the director of Sohar Hospital. He's also present with us in this session.
Yeah.
If there are no queries, I think we can wind up the session. I'm very glad that the discussion went very well. We have covered the basic topics and the various problems that are usually there in head and neck cancer patients, and how do we manage these patients and then get to them to a cured state. So over to Yasim for further proceedings.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you for the wonderful informative session has been conducted today. And thank you all for joining us. I would like to call Dr. Ashindu Kumar Bandi to end up the session.
Hello, am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, doctors. And a special mention of thanks to our team at Aster MIMS cluster at India. It was a very informative session, not only for us, which are like already associated with the medical industry, but also people at large. And I am sure that they will very well taken, and they will take these learnings, especially about early diagnosis, no hesitancy in meeting the right doctors. It also built upon, it was learning from me that the dentist and other people who are GPs, how can they refer it in time so that the patient is properly diagnosed and treated? Because especially in cancerous lesions, earlier the diagnosis better it would be. So I really thank each of you. A special mention of thanks to Dr. Subhendra Kumar for joining us and sharing his thoughts. I'm sure we'll take this discussion forward and more interactions will follow. Over to Mr. Farhan.
Thank you very much for organizing this event. I should thank the entire Oman team to have a very an enthusiastic marketing team there to arrange all these things. And I also would like to thank all the doctors present to be with us patiently for this much. Now the session is almost 1.5 hours now. And it was quite informative, and we always would like to get more queries from you. You can mail us to our units there. We'll be ready. We'll be happy to serve you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, all.